All right, so the NFL playoffs kicked off this past weekend with the wild card round. I'm going to quickly go through each of these six games. Not too many surprises really here. Just maybe I guess a couple upsets as far as the seeding goes. But to me, the biggest surprise, the Chargers and the Texans. You know, I, we both picked against the Texans in this one. We figured the Chargers would win. My surprise is not that the Texans ended up winning; it's the fact that Justin Herbert threw four picks, and the Chargers, outside that first score, basically did nothing the rest of the game.
The way this game played out was unimaginable to me. I'll be completely honest. We picked the Chargers. I thought the Texans could make it a close game. I thought they'd be scrappy. I thought they could fight. Justin Herbert threw three picks in the regular season this year. He threw four in this game. Twice to Derek Stingley, once to Kamar Lassiter, and then Eric Murray got a pick six on him. This did not feel real. The Texans are a strong team for sure when they like lock in, and they certainly locked in this game. So props to them for holding on. They were the higher seed. Not record wise, but the way conferences work. And I think this is a good thing of like why we have the playoff system we have. But not going to get into all that here. Dominant win for the Texans. I cannot imagine what was going through the Chargers' minds. I also cannot understand why Justin Herbert can't seem to play football in the playoffs. He had a great first half against the Jaguars a few years ago, and that has pretty much been it. So
Yeah.
props to C.J. Stroud and Joe Mixon for coming in, putting the team on their back offensively, and props to the Texans defense for just putting nail after nail into the coffin for the Chargers.
Yeah, man. Even so, like when I was watching the game, I didn't even realize he threw four picks. Like it was just like
Yeah.
ridiculous. So he's got to figure that out. And when they get to the playoffs, hopefully next year for him. What's not surprising though, Steelers and Ravens. I mean, this is probably the least surprising result of the entire calendar year. Um, Look, Steelers, they came out, looked lethargic. They looked overall pathetic. They looked like they already knew they were going to lose. They didn't really want to be out there. And outside that third quarter, where they actually did score, had some big plays. This was just the same old Steeler nonsense BS in the playoffs. Get a couple scores, and then outside of that, get beat up. No offense. And what was sad about this one, the defense really didn't even show up either. They got
Yeah.
run over in this one by Lamar and Derrick Henry. So not surprising. I'm just kind of sick and tired of seeing the Steelers. Not even I'm not a Steelers fan, but like kind of sick and tired of seeing the Steelers every single year be just good enough to make it in and then die.
I mean, there's parts of this season, man, where it looked like this was a top team in the NFL. They battled for a while with the Ravens for the one seed, and by the time the regular season was over, they were out of the race. It seemed like they do this every year. They somehow make it to the playoffs, and then it just ain't worth watching. 21-0 at halftime. Derrick Henry, 200 yards, beat him up. Lamar Jackson tore him up in the air. Russ actually finished with more passing yards. I mean, Russ didn't play a bad game. Steelers just didn't do anything until the third quarter, and then after that, they were like, nah, I don't really feel like it, and coasted away out in the fourth quarter. Watched this game all the way through, and I mean, I don't know. I like Lamar Jackson, so I'm happy to see him succeed. But I do like Mike Tomlin, and it was kind of crazy to watch them just get like this completely waxed in the first half, considering how they played each other. Especially that first game in the regular season. But yeah, I think if the Steelers are going to make the playoffs, they got to start getting serious about playing in the playoffs. I think it's time. It's time for them to not just take the playoffs as the accomplishment. Especially when you get matched up against a division rival from this division too. I expect a lot more. We said the Ravens would walk over him, but 21-0 halftime was not what I expected before watching the game. While watching the game, I honestly thought this could have ended 42-0. The Ravens were piling it on, but they slowed it down, kept their guys safe, move on to the next round with ease to hopefully give us a generational matchup. But we'll get to that later on in the week.
Yeah, another part of that matchup that could be definitely a classic. Bills, they beat the Broncos 31-7. This one, it started out a little bit interesting. Broncos took an early lead, pretty fast. And I was like, oh boy, I don't know. Maybe the Broncos, they might have a chance. And that was it. They did not score a single point for the rest of the game. It was, from there on, basically typical Bills offense, doing pretty well, going down the field. Every drive they took a lot of time off the clock. Pretty much dominated the time of possession in this one. It wasn't even close. I mean, 41 minutes to 18 minutes for time possession in the Bills' favor. Not really too much to say. I mean, it was a great game by the Bills. Props to the Broncos for being able to get their first time since they beat us in the Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, they just weren't a match for the Bills.
Yeah, I think as a fan of football, I was happy to see a team like the Broncos with a rookie quarterback make it in the playoffs. But as a Panthers fan, I was very happy to see them lose 31-7. Um, Still, as a football fan, when they score that first touchdown, especially like a 50-yard bomb, as soon as the game starts, essentially, I'm thinking, all right, we got a football game here. Instead, Sean McDermott locks into the Sean McDermott way, which is kill as much time as possible while still being efficient on your offensive drives, and that's exactly what they did. Josh Allen ends up breaking the playoff rushing record, which was just set by Lamar the previous day. These two are going to trade that record or playoff rushing record by a QB. They're going to trade that like every season until they retire, which will be fun. So they have a good day. James Cook tore him up pretty good. So it was fun while it lasted for the first drive for the Broncos. And there's some times where they maybe could have got a field goal, but they certainly realized field goal is not going to cut it. So they started going for it on fourth. I think they went for like a 4th and 17 towards the end of the game, which again, it's 28-7. You don't need to kick a field goal at that point. Try to do what you can, but it doesn't work out for them. They score that first touchdown, fade away. Bills answered the touchdown with a field goal, and then after that, go, oh wait a minute, we're the Bills, and march their way into the next round.
Yeah, so that sets up the AFC divisional round: Chiefs and Texans, and then Bills, Ravens, like we mentioned. Moving to the NFC, first game, Packers and Eagles. This one, kind of a disgusting game, to be honest with you. A lot of injuries, turnovers. Not the greatest game to watch. I mean, maybe even if you're an Eagles fan, not really that great. Saquon Barkley was basically the star here. Um, even the Eagles' early touchdown, like that was off of a blunder on the kickoff return. So, it's not really like the Eagles were doing too much on offense here. I mean, Packers actually outgained them. But at the end of the day, a win is a win. But considering that they're going to have to play the Rams this week, they're going to have to bring their A game for sure.
Yeah, this one is a weird one. I thought that the Packers were the biggest threat for an upset, and for a little bit it looked like that was completely untrue because they started with a fumble, which I think they recovered, but
Yeah.
there's no need to entirely get into that one here. They lost handedly otherwise, um, and then immediately got scored on, and I thought, well, this isn't gonna be good. Then they kind of made it a little more competitive, but Packers end up going out. I don't want to say going out sad, but a little sad. Definitely made the Eagles look a little more human. Kept Saquon out of the end zone, and I think it makes the Eagles probably very aware that they can't play that way against the Rams, especially with the way the Rams beat the Vikings. We'll talk about that game here in a few seconds, but I think the Eagles know that this type of performance against that Rams team, if the Rams team is playing at that efficiency, is not going to cut it. So uh, props to the Eagles for surviving a pretty decent upset scare, but I would expect a lot more out of them, and I do expect to see more out of them when they go to the next round and play the Rams. I think they'll be a lot better.
And they're going to have to be. While the Commanders, their division rival, they move on, win their first playoff game in 19 years. They beat the Buccaneers, who, funnily enough, is their last playoff victory. They win that one 23-20 with a walk-off field goal. This is the only one I like. Unfortunately, didn't get to watch the entire way through, but definitely probably the best game from this weekend by far. Definitely an enjoyable matchup, at least from what I saw. And for my takeaways, kind of like Washington. I was gonna pick them. I said I picked against them. You picked them, so you're right there. They definitely hung with the Bucks. Even though it was close the entire time. They were down at some points. Washington, I think they'll probably lose to the Lions. They're definitely for real, and they've got a huge and bright future with Jaden Daniels out there, man. Like he didn't seem like he was, flustered or anything like that. Unlike the quarterback we're going to talk about next year in a second, he didn't seem flustered. It didn't seem like the moment was too big for him. Going up against a guy like Baker who has had that playoff experience against a team that's won a Super Bowl in recent years, he seemed like he was fine. So hats off to him.
Yeah, and so I'll be clear. I didn't get to see the entirety of the Packers Eagles game. I did watch uh, pretty much all this one. I missed a little bit of the first quarter, And Jaden Daniels did look completely poised the whole time, including, and I think most importantly, on that game-winning drive at the end of the game, he was just, playing normal. It didn't look like anything changed. He also ended up with a big cut on his face in the middle of the game. That didn't seem to phase him. He stayed calm. He did not really worry too much about the pressure. He had a few plays that I wasn't a big fan of, right? Towards the end of the game, they were really close to the end zone, and he kind of ran out and pump faked it around and then threw it to nowhere. Did not look good. He definitely could have kept it and got in or things like that. They turned it over on fourth down, and then the Buccaneers went, "No, you can have it," and fumbled immediately. And so the Commanders then end up again at 4th and 2, and then they throw a touchdown. And I think that kind of energy, especially in the playoffs, is really impressive for a rookie, right? You've got a coach and a team that is just going to go for it on fourth down, 4th and 2, almost no matter what. I mean, these guys,
Yeah.
not punters, and we're about to get the like insanity football bowl when they play the Lions, because they're not going to punt. But I respect Jaden Daniels for staying as poised as he did. I feel bad for Baker to have been the one who fumbled. He looked really, really crushed as they lost that game. But playoffs are playoffs. You can't drop the ball there. But I think really good win by the Commanders here. I picked them, and I kind of thought this game would be around here with the score. So it was fun to watch. There was some moments where I thought the Bucks had taken it from them, but I'll say, as much as I think that they probably will not beat the Lions, the Commanders are a dangerous offense and a very resilient team. They just have a huge weakness, which is that defense does not hold up all the time. When they finally took the lead later in the game, the Bucks walked them down and made it. Now you've got 20 points right there, or 17. I can't remember exactly, but the Commanders are going to have some issues on the defensive side when they play the Lions, but they're a resilient team. I don't want to call them lucky, but they have incredible odds at the end of these games this season, and I respect Jaden Daniels' composure. So I think it'll be fun to watch them play the Lions, and I'm excited to pick for that game later on.
Well, at the very least, though, that defense is a lot better than it has been previously. And we know that it used to be, the focal point of that team. So yeah, they'll like I said, we'll pick that game later this week, and the Lions division rival. I truthfully, I say this. I'll say it right now. I wasted my time watching this one. And the Vikings, I'm not gonna call their season a waste, but I mean, another season where the Vikings come in, they win, 11, 12, 13, now 14 games. First 14 win wild card team in history. You put up 9 points. 9 points. What are we doing? I mean, like I don't understand. The offensive line was horrible. Sam Darnold was not good. The running game basically was non-existent. I mean, they just did nothing. They literally could have. They literally could have just stayed on the bus. I mean, they should have just not shown up. Um, it was bad, and I know Vikings fans, they gotta be pretty frustrated just overall. Even going back, the last 10, 15 years, because since that NFC Championship game where that welfare thief Brett Favre, for some reason, threw across his body, threw a pick, lost him the game. They've really only been good for beating the Saints in the playoffs and breaking their hearts. Otherwise, they've been one and done, even with really talented teams with an MVP. And this is another season where you have a great year, you're expecting to do something, and you just fall short and basically don't show up in the playoffs again.
This is 100% a team that probably should have made it. I mean, maybe the Eagles keep them out, but they probably should have made it to the championship, NFC Championship. Maybe even to the Super Bowl. I mean, Lions seem to be their crux. Which actually, funny enough, the I'm sure people have seen this stat by now, but the Vikings only lost 4 games this season. In the regular season, they lost to the Lions. The next week, they played the Rams. They lost to the Rams. At the end of the regular season, they played the Lions, lost, and then immediately played the Rams and lost again. So they lost to the Lions and Rams back to back twice this year, which is their only 4 losses. So maybe this just wasn't in the stars. That does not excuse them, however, for scoring only 9 points. I mean, and also for scoring the exact same amount of points that Sam Darnold was sacked. uh, the Rams sacked Sam Darnold 9 times. The Vikings put up 9 points. Not a good look. We talked about it. Terrence made a little joke there a little bit ago. I respect Jaden Daniels' composure as a rookie. This is Sam Darnold's playoff debut as well. Composure, not there. And I understand you get sacked 9 times. It's not all on you. But he held onto that ball sometimes. And I didn't see all of this game either. I didn't waste as much time as I think you did. I wasn't able to see it. Grad school's a tough one. But
Thank God for you.
Sam Darnold is from the plays I've seen and from the parts of the game that I watched live, uh, no composure. And the Rams are a dangerous offense. I mean, they're not an offense that you want to get going. And I'll say the Vikings probably should have had that fumble recovery touchdown upheld.
Yeah.
Wouldn't make them win this game. Wouldn't make the score look that much better. It would probably mean that they would have went for an extra point. So maybe you're looking at 17-27. Not as pitiful, but I just can't understand how the Vikings got here and played that terribly. The Rams defense can be good, but I think the Vikings made them look way better than they usually are. And I will concede that the Rams offense is a high octane threat at their peak, and the Vikings gave them their peak, which is confusing because one of the good things about the Vikings all season was that Brian Flores defense. So I don't know what the Lions did to them, 2 weeks ago. I don't know what the Lions did to them that one time in the regular season either. But both times the Vikings lost to the Rams, it was right after a loss to the Lions. Maybe it just snatched their soul from them. If they had an extra week, maybe they'd be back to it next week. But ain't no next week for this team. Not sure what's going to happen to Sam Darnold as far as his Vikings tenure. They've got a weird QB situation. Um, yeah, I'll take my. I'm happy to have had my Commanders pick be successful here, and I will take my L on picking the Vikings for this one. I can't even understand how they played that poorly on defense and offense in this game.